Archaeonauts, away!
There are many people who have experienced a paranormal event involving what they perceive to be a ghost, or sometimes an angel. So what is the difference between the two? They are difficult to study scientifically because we usually can't see or hear ghosts, or in some cases we don't realize we are seeing or hearing an angel. So a lot of what we know, or what we think we know, is based on stories and speculation. I'm going to be adding some of my own thoughts to the topic, but first I will start with ghost and explain what other people who research ghosts have come up with. From the ghost stories I've heard and from what various people who do ghost hunting have said, I think ghosts can generally be categorized into 3 categories, although some would categorize them into 4 or 5 categories. The first category would be a messenger type of ghost. This is a ghost that appears to be self-aware and aware of its surroundings, and appears just wants to relay a message of some sort. It may be the ghost of a friend or a relative who has recently passed on, come in just to say goodbye, or let someone know they are okay and moving on. The second category is a haunting ghost that seems attached to a specific place, or in some cases to a specific person. This is the type of ghost that would be common in a haunted house. It's the ghost of a dead person who, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to want to move on, or maybe can't move on for some reason. Some have speculated that these types of ghosts don't even know they are dead. That explanation seems a bit strange to me, though. I could understand if they didn't immediately realize they were dead, but after a while, you'd think they could figure it out. Especially in a haunted house that's been haunted for like 100 years or more. It seems more likely to me they are just unwilling to move on for whatever reason. Now, I'll mention another type of ghost here that could fit into the second category, but some would consider it to be a category of its own. That is a poltergeist, which means noisy spirit, and is the kind known to be the most troublesome to people. It has a tendency to make noises like banging on things or going bump in the night, as the old cliche goes. They may also make lights flicker or turn electronic devices on and off, or sometimes move things around. Oftentimes these ghosts are not seen, only heard. Some researchers don't even think these ghosts are ghosts at all in the traditional sense, but actually manifestations of some unconscious psychic energy in a living person. It's oftentimes associated with teen angst, especially with teen girls. I don't know if that's really the case, but I can neither prove or disprove that. The next category might fit into either the haunting ghost or poltergeist categories, or maybe both, depending on how you want to count these. This would be the demon category, which probably would not be ghosts of human persons, but of fallen angels. I'll be talking about angels more later on, though. The final category, which may be the 3rd, 4th, or 5th category, depending on how you want to count these up, is the residual haunting. This type of haunting is more like a recording of events. The ghost or ghosts don't appear to be aware of what is going on presently, and just repeat the same events over and over. It might be someone walking down a staircase or a soldier on a battlefield. Whatever the case may be, they don't try to interact with the people that see them or be aware of them. This type may be the most bizarre to me, because what would the event even be recorded on, and what makes it repeat? Some have speculated that maybe certain types of stone or earthen material is conducive for recording events in some way, but I'm not aware of that being anything more than some wild speculation, for lack of a better answer. So generally speaking, ghosts are associated with being the soul of a dead person living on after their death. That might not always be the case, but it's what we generally associate with the word ghost with. They are usually invisible and silent, but in some cases may temporarily become visible or partially visible, or make some kind of sound. Angels are often thought of as being invisible and silent as well. So what makes an angel different from a ghost? I think the first thing to clarify here is what the word angel means. Originally, the word angel was just a word for messenger, so an angel of God would be a messenger of God. Over time, the word has come to be viewed as more of a general term for various types of divine beings, including seraphim and cherubim. The Old Testament of the Bible doesn't describe these beings as being messengers, though. They are more like throne guardians, the seraphim being the highest order, flying around the throne of God, singing, "Holy, holy, holy." Cherubim serve God directly and were also used to guard the entrance to the Garden of Eden after the fall of mankind. In the original sense of the word, these beings may not have been classified as angels, but in the modern sense, the word angel is generally associated with any kind of divine being beneath God. What I will be discussing here will be the angels that we think of in the more original sense, or if you're going by angel hierarchies, would be considered the lowest ranking hierarchy, although I think I should point out the angel hierarchies are created by men and may not represent an actual hierarchy in heaven. So these would be, typically the angels you would see depicted in art with wings, although they don't actually have wings. That's just the way they're depicted in art. So getting back to the difference between ghosts and angels, I think the initial distinction we can make here is that angels are divine, immortal beings created by God, and not the ghost of human persons. Although I think it might be possible for the ghost of a human to be promoted to being an angel, but I'm not sure about that. In the New Testament, Jesus does say that in the resurrection, people will become like angels, though. I think there's another difference here, though, between ghosts and angels. It's generally thought that for some reason it is difficult for ghosts to interact with people or the physical world. They are normally invisible or silent, but occasionally they are able to make some kind of sound or move something or maybe even appear visibly, although usually in some kind of transparent or incomplete form. Many think they can sometimes manipulate electronic devices. This is why a lot of ghost hunters use voice recorders to try to record some attempt at audible communication, or E2 meters that they think the ghost can use to turn them off and on. This perceived difficulty in making their presence known is why many people don't believe they exist at all. They can't see or hear them, and they assume what others perceive to be the presence of a ghost is something that can be explained by something else. Some kind of electrical interference or the creaks a house makes due to changes in the temperature during the night or day, or perhaps just some kind of hallucination. Whatever the case may be, I don't think angels have this same perceived difficulty. I think they can actually take on a fully physical human form, or at least what appears to be a fully physical human form. I take this view because ancient religious texts often depict them this way, but also because many of the angel stories I have heard from modern times also depict them this way. For example, in the Bible, the way they look is not described in great detail, but they often appear to at least look human to the people who see them. For example, in Genesis, when the two angels visit Lot and his family in Sodom, no one knows they are angels at first, so we can conclude that they looked like normal humans. It's not until later that it is revealed they are angels, when they strike the people trying to invade Lot's house with blindness. In the New Testament, the writer of the book of Hebrews says not to forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. This passage might even be loosely referencing the story of Lot's family, but nonetheless it is suggesting that angels could appear to be human. Most modern stories that I have heard that are said to be stories of angels also usually happen like this. In some cases, they might appear in a way that shows their divine nature, but oftentimes not. Usually they appear to be human, and the person who sees them just sees them as being human. They usually show up in some time of need, and then are just suddenly gone once they have assisted. It's not until after they have disappeared that the observer realizes they might have just seen an angel. You can find plenty of angel stories online or in books, but here are a few that I can tell you from my memory. One story, and I'm not sure if I remember all the details correctly, but there was a girl driving somewhere she was unfamiliar with out in the middle of nowhere when she got a flat tire. She's scared, doesn't know how to get help. Maybe she didn't have a cell phone signal, or maybe this was before cell phones became common. I can't remember for sure. I want to say there was snow on the ground too. Suddenly, a guy comes up the hill rolling a tire, though. So somewhere out in the middle of nowhere in the snow, a guy apparently knew she needed a new tire. He helps her get the tire on, and he's suddenly nowhere to be seen soon after that. The girl knew he couldn't have walked off without being seen somewhere that quickly, especially with snow on the ground, making walking at any fast pace difficult. Another story I can remember is about a woman local to where I live. She had become ill with something serious, I don't remember what, but one day her doorbell rang, and she went to the door, and there was a man standing there. She then felt a heat come off of him. I don't remember if he disappeared right in front of her or if she might have temporarily blacked out or something, but he disappeared nonetheless. You can probably guess what happens next. The next time she goes to the doctor, she is no longer sick with whatever was wrong with her before. She knew she had been healed by an angel, and she went on to open a shop selling angel decor. I'm not sure if she sold anything else in the store, but I remember seeing the store when I was younger. This story is from many years ago, and the store is long since closed, and she may have passed on since then. Now, I don't know for sure, but for a time it's possible an angel helped her extend her life even longer. He appeared to be a man, and it wasn't until after her experience that she realized he was an angel. This isn't the only story I've heard about someone getting cured after feeling a heat come upon them. I saw another story like this recently in a 60-minute video about Our Lady of Lourdes. I just heard another story recently on a podcast called Touched by Heaven. Late at night, a former soldier named Cowboy John, who was about to shoot himself and a second away from pulling the trigger, hears a knock on the window. It was an old man in tattered clothes, but very clean, and he really emphasized that despite the tattered clothes, this guy was very clean looking. The man told him he didn't know what was so bad that it would bring Cowboy John to do that, but that all he had was the clothes he was wearing, and he would give them to him if he would pray with him for a moment. The prayer, he said, touched Cowboy John's heart, and he began to cry. When he looked up, the man had vanished. The next day, he went to the VA and told them he needed help and got the help he needed. So I point out these stories and what the Bible says just to show that angels can apparently take on a fully human, or at least what appears to be a human-like form. So the next question someone may ask is, why don't they just show themselves and tell us who they are? That question is more difficult to answer, though. It seems like they might be following some kind of rule where they don't physically get involved or interfere, but in some cases exceptions are allowed. I'm not sure what that rule might be specifically, but if such a rule exists, it may have something to do with the difference between falling angels and angels in full communion with God. In Genesis 6, we have the story of the sons of God marrying the daughters of men and having the Nephilim. Now, there are a few different opinions on who the sons of God are, and I'm not going to be talking about that here, but suffice to say, I'm of the opinion the sons of God refer to angelic beings, and I've spent a good deal of time researching that story, and I'm pretty sure that is the correct way to interpret that passage. I'm not basing that opinion on stories from outside of the Bible, but there are non-canonical texts outside of the Bible that do elaborate more on the subject. In one story, angelic beings are said to have luminal bodies, but when coming to Earth to interact with people, they take on a physical form like that of humans. I think this is where the fallen angels, the sons of God from the Genesis 6 story, went wrong. They left their rightful dwelling place with God and lusted after human women. I'm not sure if we know exactly why they did this. Maybe it was an intentional sin, maybe it wasn't. In one apocryphal version of the story, the leaders of the fallen angels told God they wanted to go to Earth to help humanity. God warned them that they shouldn't because they would become tempted like men. They claimed they were strong enough to handle it and still wanted to go and help humanity. It's unclear to me if they were lying to God and just wanted him to grant them permission to go to Earth, or if they genuinely believed they could help humanity and were strong enough to handle the temptations of being in a physical human form. If the latter is true, it's interesting because it would indicate they originally had good intentions but were themselves unable to resist the temptations humans face and corrupted themselves by committing sin with human women. Now, whatever the case may be there, I think that brings us to another difference here. I don't think angels have children. For that matter, I guess this is more of a distinction between angels and humans in general, because I don't think ghosts have children either. I mean, have you ever heard of a ghost story of a haunted house where two ghosts get together and create a new ghost family? I mean, it's not a story that you know is supposed to be fiction anyway. I mean, normally a ghost is just a ghost of who they were in life. I can't think of any story where a ghost marries another ghost and those two ghosts create a ghost kid together. But that's the thing, angels don't have babies together. God did not create them to have mates, and create offspring. They were created to be immortal and not to have mates, and therefore have no children. Jesus makes reference to this in the New Testament in Matthew 22:30 when he says men will not marry in the resurrection and become like angels, meaning that angels don't marry. This was the sin of the fallen angels. They weren't supposed to take on any mates. They don't take mates among themselves, and they weren't supposed to take mates with human women. Jude refers to this in his book in the New Testament. And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling, these he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. In a similar way, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns gave themselves up to sexual immorality and perversion. They serve as an example of those who suffer the punishment of eternal fire. Jude chapter 1, verses 6 through 7. Here, Jude is referencing the sons of God who committed sexual sin with the daughters of men. In verse 6, he says they left their rightful dwelling place, which is with God in heaven. In verse 7, he references the sexual sins at Sodom and Gomorrah. I think this is indicating the angels who left their rightful dwelling place in heaven committed sexual sin on earth. They were not created to have mates or to have children, but were created to be immortal beings. But they chose to take a physical human form and then commit sin, so they were sentenced to die like men. It seems that creating new life, that is, having children, is something that humans were created to do. Of course, humans aren't the only ones to reproduce this way, as there's a whole animal kingdom here on earth doing it the same way we do. But humans were created to have dominion over the earth and the animal kingdom. So the point here is just that it's here on earth, in the physical realm, that new life is created. I don't know that this is necessarily unique to humans and earth and the entire universe, as the universe is quite big, and I suppose it is possible God may have created other places like earth and other people that could create life, but I don't know. More to the point here, angels have their role in the universe, but I don't think that role includes creating new life. Creating new life is what humans do. On a side note here, it's also interesting to me that a lot of alien UFO abduction stories also include stories of aliens conducting reproductive experiments on humans, or in some cases creating hybrid offspring. I find it interesting how similar that is to the ancient stories in the Bible and other non-canonical texts about fallen angels. I don't know who or what the aliens are, or where they are from, or if they even exist. But if they do exist, perhaps they cannot produce offspring of their own, and that is why they try to learn how to do it using humans, or try to create offspring of their own using humans, much like the fallen angels did so long ago. It's a very similar story to me. So enough about the fallen angels, though. What about the good angels, still in full communion with God? Why don't they just drop in and say hello? Well, I don't know what their rules are for sure, but I think it might come down to one or two things, or possibly both things combined. One possibility is they don't want to make the same mistake the fallen angels did. If they take human form, they risk being tempted by the sins that humans are tempted by and sinning themselves. Perhaps what the fallen angels did was a lesson to the other angels, and the angels choose not to take human form so as to not suffer the same fate, only occasionally taking a human form briefly to assist or intervene in some situation, and then swiftly returning to their angelic form before the physical risks and temptations can come upon them. Maybe for that reason we shouldn't expect them to appear to us. Maybe asking them to appear in a human form is like asking them to expose themselves to temptation and corruption. Not a nice thing to do. And I don't know that it's their job to fix the world's problems. I think humans are supposed to try to fix the world's problems, though I think angels do lend a helping hand sometimes, despite the potential risk to themselves in the physical world. Another possibility may have to do with God forbidding people to contact the dead. Now, I don't think angels are ghosts of humans, at least not the original angels, but they might not want to risk confusing anyone. Not taking a human form and communicating in a telepathic way might be possible for them, but in some cases, doing so might confuse a person and cause them to try contacting the dead instead. An angel in full communion with God may not want to risk being a contributing factor to something forbidden unless granted permission to do so by God. It may also be they only take a fully human form when God permits them to do that, even if only briefly. By taking a fully human form, they may be able to interact with a person who doesn't even realize they are an angel. although what they say or do, or disappearing suddenly, may give away their angelic nature in some cases, as in the stories we have of them. So, of course, ghosts and angels are a topic where there are a lot of different opinions and beliefs out there, but I thought I would throw in my own 2 cents on the subject. I don't have a scientific way I can physically prove the existence of ghosts or angels for a non-believer. My thoughts on the topic are formed primarily from stories other people have told, both ancient and modern. Not every story is alike, and not all may fit into the same mold, but I found a lot of consistencies in many of them. I think ghosts are the souls of humans after the death of their physical bodies, and angels are immortal beings who dwell on the other side of the veil, so to speak, a place where ghosts go after leaving their physical bodies. I think most ghosts are just stuck somewhere and aren't able to fully manifest in the physical world, like some kind of ethereal chains holding them back. Angels, I think, can fully manifest, they just usually don't. Or in short, I guess you could say ghosts may want to manifest but can't, and angels can manifest, but usually don't. Ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, I think angels were created with the purpose of serving God. Humans were created to tend the earth and to create new life. Those are my thoughts on that. Thanks for listening.